Well, it's time to tear down Wayne Tower. Welcome, Simple Rudd. This episode is going to be focused on, well, turning this into pieces. It's time to tear down Wayne Tower so I can move forward with the build into Meshalicious, which I still haven't quite figured out a theme for, but part of that's because I haven't thrown everything in there yet. Now, the main reason for this teardown is I've been having some issues with the 2080 Ti, and the next thing I want to root out the issue being are cables, power cables, PCI riser cable, and in order to do that, I kind of need to tear this apart. Not to mention, I've been wanting to move away from the Shift X for a decent amount of time. For one, I didn't really set it up to be maintenanced, so it, got disgusting. And since I didn't set it up for maintenance, I dreaded draining the loop. And as you can see, that went, well, okay-ish. I still have a towel because there is still going to be some fluid in the radiators. So when I get that far, I'm going to have to drain the rest of that as well. Don't forget to subscribe. The next episode is going to be going through and cleaning the water blocks along with the reservoir and seeing if I can get those back to looking brand new. Now, for starters, the first thing I wanted to do was pull the heat killer. Well, in order to do that, I have to start pulling out the cables. Because, well, the cable's all intertwined in there, and, unhooking this means it would still be attached to the cables. So I think my start is going to be unraveling, well, all of this, which I've got side cutters and I got my iFixit, and this should be everything I need to tear this down. So I guess we'll just get started. So one thing that the Shift did do well, and that was accommodate for spots for zip ties, and it's got a couple included Velcro belts to hold bundles. And really, if I didn't go with the extensions, this would have turned out wonderfully. I kind of learned my lesson. From here on out, my personal builds will probably be done with cable mod because, well, for one, they look amazing, and two, it eliminates this issue of just, well, all of this extra mess that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So one thing I did with this, and so with Noctua fans, and I was new to RGB and I still wanted kind of that RGB look, was I went with the halos. Now the halos give it a cool look. It's not quite as lit up as an RGB fan would be, but still, adds light. And really, it looked cool for about a year, and after that, the LEDs started failing on me. So I had 2 of the 4 fail, so 50-50. I don't know if that's good enough for me to use the halos again. I think going forward, if I'm using Noctuas, I'm just going to go with no RGB on the fans, which is fine because you still have the option of, RGB strips and anything else they're really adding. As you can kind of tell, this was rather fun fitting everything in here for the build. In fact, I'm not quite positive on how I'm going to get everything out of here. So for the fans, I did, utilize some bridging. That way I could run all 4 off of an limited amount of fan headers. Which I think that might have done enough to get a good portion of these pulled out-ish. So these are your fan power, but then you've also got the halos, which come all the way over here. So I got some zip ties in there I need to clip. No more pretty bundle, sadly. That actually took a decent amount of work and I was very happy with it, and then, well, then I hit it. It's also going to be fun. Well, maybe this is one that I just pull off the motherboard after I get the motherboard taken out. Okay, so to not make this too painful for you, I'm just gonna go through and get this stuff dewired, unwired, non-wired. Get these out of here, and then I'll follow up with the next steps after that. So this disaster should give you an idea of just how much cables I had in here. Now, I had made a custom little cover for the power supply to hide all my cables in, which means I had all of this crammed in there. Not ideal. It worked and has worked, but it's not my proudest work. From here, now I can start taking all the fans off. I can take the heat killer off, and then probably the reservoir, and I'll probably do probably the motherboard and the graphics cards last. I'm not sure. I know for sure I want to get this pump out of the way, and it should be rather straightforward. You've got 4 screws in here on the radiator, and taking those out will allow me to take the whole thing out of the assembly. Now sadly, I don't think this is going to fit in the Meshalicious, but I do want it cleaned up because it's going to look good in any build it gets used in again, and it's definitely one of the favorites. It seems like pretty popular just because it has a somewhat unique look. It's not just your basic cylinder. It's not overly extravagant either. And with that, the heat killer is free. And it actually did a decent job of draining. So that's handy. So one thing I didn't go over, which is the benefit of extensions like these. And really, I guess there's 2 benefits. One of which, it's cheap, right? It gave the theme a wonderful look. I did paint these, and so the green didn't come like this. It wasn't purple and green. I did paint these, but it gave the nice purple and green theme for, I think, 20 bucks for the set. The nice thing is they can go on any power supply. So you got to pay attention when you're buying cable mod cables. They are power supply specific. These, however, are extensions. So mostly they're just a 1-to-1. So they'll work with whatever, because it's essentially connecting the same wire that would be connected anyways. You still have to hook all your normal cables into the power supply, so the power supply pinout no longer matters. Only because these are still going off of those. To whereas custom cables are going to be pinned out for the specific power supply. So just something to keep in mind when you're shopping for cables. So this hole is not stock for the Shift. This is something else I also did myself, which was, I just got a little creative with the Dremel. Put a hole in there. The nice thing was there was already somewhat holes there for mounting hard drives and stuff like that, which came on brackets. So I was able to utilize like mounting holes and stuff like that, but I still needed to cut the large hole to allow for air to the fan. Now, as I've already mentioned, I kind of killed that with all the cables in there, but originally the thought was there, then it was good. So that would have been something that I would have benefited from, having cable mod cables and not have the excess that you see here in front of you. One fan down, 4 more to go. Well, I was mostly right on the order I have to take this apart. Now, up here I did go with a 140mm fan, even though clearly it's a 120 by 4 radiator. And I believe I went with that because of, well, the fans I had. I had bought industrial fans, and I believe I planned on having a 140 on the bottom, and I didn't go with that. I don't know. We'll see when I get down there. I can't honestly remember what's down there. But in order to get the last remaining screws out on the radiator, I have to get the fan out. In order to get the fan out, I have to take the graphics card out. Now what's interesting about the graphics card is you've got one screw way back here, and then you've got these two screws right here, and then the whole assembly should come down. At least if I remember correctly. It's been 2 years since I've done this, and I'm just kind of winging it tonight. So that screw's there. This whole thing is just hanging out there. Swing it over so you can see. So you got this whole assembly, which will take... Should probably pop this PCIe off as well. So the riser cable is what I'm assuming is wrong with my graphics card. Now, I'm saying assuming because I don't actually have proof of that yet. It's a little sketchy, but we got to get it on camera, right? It's only a $1,500 graphics card. I guess in today's market it's like $2,000, possibly $3,000 to the right person, huh? But to me, it's invaluable because getting a graphics card's not that easy. And it slides right down. Got the ribbon cable, the riser cable comes out, and there you have it. The graphics card is out, and as you can tell, it needs a good cleaning. Set this somewhere hopefully safe. So this allows me to then hopefully get this fan out of here. It's a little snugger than I would have liked. And yeah, dust everywhere. That's gonna be something I definitely have to clean. And most of this is kind of beyond being able to dust out anyway, so I'm actually have to, actually clean it. Now at this point, the radiator is just holding on 2 screws. Again, this case was never intended for this, although it would have been cool to see included just because of how easy it actually was to mod the case to do this. You really just take that top bracket and cut it in half, and then put some spacers and it could be there. That is something that Phanteks could have easily supported. Now I do have these 2 fittings in here that I need to get out. It's a good thing I got a towel because this is going to pee everywhere. If it'll come out. Now if you could imagine, that was not fun to install either. In fact, taking it out was a lot easier than putting it in there. It's one of those where I would have been better off not including the 120 radiator, lessons learned. And I want to point this kind of stuff out because one, it'll help me remember in the future to think this kind of thing through, but it'll also point out things to you to look for, to look out for, to, think about when you're wanting to go over the top of your build. Get my bucket of dirty coolant as it might be useful as I get this radiator off. The last radiator is going to be a little more interesting. Now I say that just because it is attached from the bottom of the case, which means I've got to pop the bottom off, take the fan off, and then remove the radiator. And there you have it. No longer is this a 480 rad shift. Unlike what I've seen in all the nickel plated blocks, there is a bit of green staining, but it's inside of your radiator. So I'm going to do my best to get that as clean as possible, which I'll be doing in the next episode. So that radiator is free. So now we're getting really close. I got the motherboard, which is 4 screws, and that comes out. And then I have the 4 screws on the bottom and the power supply. So how about I go through and remove those and I'll meet you right back here. So now all that remains is to pull the motherboard. And at that point, Wayne Tower is no more. You know, I always forget how small the SF power supplies are. I mean, this thing's tiny. But 750 watts platinum rating. It's been wonderful. Now, one thing I did on Wayne Tower to kind of add the benefit, no, I guess, add the aesthetic, make it look a little pretty and fancy, is these acrylic panels. It's not my best work. It was kind of me learning as I go, but all I did to make these was I put a vinyl on this side, painted it black with the vinyl on there, painted the other side whatever color I wanted, so I painted part of it green and then I hit it with purple. Then you pull the vinyl off and it gives it this wonderful 3D kind of look, and it really pops. Now sadly, the way I built it, this part didn't see very much, but you could see the ha-ha-ha's, and that, you know, I did jokes on you, Batman, right here as well. And it really wasn't that difficult, wasn't that time consuming, but it made all the difference on the build. Now with that, let's remove the 4 final screws and call it a wrap on Wayne Tower. I do not recommend working like this, but in order to, you know, be able to show you absolutely anything on the screen, even if it's not that well, I kind of have to do it at this weird angle. It's in the worst possible place for this angle. Get that out. The motherboard is free. Rather dirty. Quite a bit of weight too once you add this beautiful EK water block that needs some love and attention. I really did love this motherboard too. It really just looks so damn good. And it went really well with the G-Skill. Yeah. Hey Seuss, you're definitely doing it right. Your stuff's pretty. Keep it up. With that, don't forget to subscribe. I gotta go through, clean up these water blocks, and then I'm gonna start doing, you know, some build logs on the Meshalicious and kind of walk you through what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and how it's going. The only thing I have planned out is it's getting that graphics card, this motherboard, this power supply, and a Black Ice 280 radiator. Yeah, Black Ice L 280 radiator. Yeah. It's fancy. Hardware Labs. There we go. That was the word I was thinking of. Hardware Labs. With that, I'm done. Thank you for watching.